Hello, BookTube. I had to leave the house today. I had to put on pants and go outside. I volunteer time at a children's pediatric care unit here in Boston, and I did that today. I just got a children's picture book called A Home in the Barn by Margaret Wise Brown. I thought it'd make a perfect thing to read, so I brought that with me, and we read that book, and then we talked all about barnyard animals, farm animals, which these kids have never met. These kids have, I think one of them had a cat once that she dimly remembers. One of them had a dog once that he dimly remembers. But they've never seen a horse. They've never seen a cow. They've never met a pig. They've never seen swallows in the air or bats. They just have never seen anything. It was all new to them. It was like it was describing the wildlife of deepest Africa. And of course, I am familiar with these animals from of old. so I answered all their questions. We talked all about these things. It was wonderful. It was bittersweet. It was bittersweet in a way. I mean, it's always great fun to sit and gossip with these kids. They are the sweetest, most generous people in the world. The bittersweet thing is that quite a few of them are probably not going to live. So it's not just that they've never met a pig, it's that they're never going to meet a pig. So I did my best to make it as three-dimensional as possible. But it wore on me a bit, I admit, and I gave myself a treat since I was out and about anyway. I went to the Brattle Book-Shop here in Boston. For those of you who are new, there are some new people on this channel. Feel free to sing off in the comments field, but welcome anyway. The Brattle Book-Shop is an old and wonderful used bookstore here in Boston that has just an incredible turnover of stock. So unlike a lot of used bookstores, you don't know what's going to be there from one week to another, even from one day to another. And in addition to that, they also have a sale lot next door with $1, $3 and $5 sale books that are fantastic. You can easily amass a library for very little money out there in the sale lot. So it was a lovely day, so I went to the Brattle, and so as a result, I have books to show you. I thought we'd just go through them. The first one is a perfect example of the Brattle synergy. There's a Brattle synergy that I firmly believe is real. In the outside carts, I almost never shop inside the shop. I almost always restrict myself to the outside carts because it's such a great feeling to just fill an arm with books. It's such a great feeling to fill an arm with books and know that you could buy them all if you wanted to. That's such a great feeling. I am trying to resist that feeling these days. I fill an arm with books anyway, yes, because at the Brattle, you absolutely have to carry everything you see that you think you might want. Because if you try and go back to it, it'll be gone. If someone else in the lot at that moment will snatch it up right after you put it down. And believe me, there is no more bittersweet feeling than leaving a book on the shelf that you think you're interested in, walking a few carts over while you browse, while you're thinking, I actually do want that book, going back to that spot and seeing it not there and in someone else's arm. That is a terrible feeling. A terrible feeling. So you fill an arm anyway with books. And I did that today, and then I just decided to get more than I should have. So I wanted to show them to you. And the synergy that I'm talking about is that sometimes, whether it's random chance or whether it's that the books are bought from the same person, they're boxed up, they're put in a van, they're brought over to the shop, they're brought down into the basement, they sit sometimes for a while, then they're brought up piecemeal and priced and put out on the sale lot. You would think that all of those factors working together would mean that that there's no way that any books would ever stay together, and yet they do. They do, very much so. So, for instance, today, the sale lot had it must have been every biography ever written of Robert Graves. No idea why, except that they probably all came from the same person and have just been interspersed somehow. But the other day, I was looking at my biography shelves. I had occasion to move around a whole bunch of books in biography, and I realized to my horror that I had no biographies of Nathaniel Hawthorne, who's one of my favorite American writers. And I went to the Brattle last week. With that in mind, of course, one of the keys to the sale lot is that you must never go there while looking for something. You must be receptive to what the sale lot offers you, because it's all random. So there's no organization out there. So you can't go saying, well, I'm going to go to the sale lot and look for a copy of Ivanhoe. if it's there, fine, but you can't impose your will on the sale lot. But even so, when I found a biography of Hawthorne called Hawthorne and Concord, one that I really like, I found that last week. I actually thought, because it often happens at the Brattle, that I bet other biographies of him will turn up. And one did. The other biography that I wanted, the one that I absolutely wanted, this one here, it's by Edwin Haviland Miller, and it's Salem is My Dwelling Place. And unlike Hawthorne and Concord, this is a full biography. This is everything, every detail. And it's wonderful. Just wonderful. Took the author forever to write, and you can tell. It's painstaking and very eloquent. But I also found another biography. Those of you who are new to the channel, biographies are my favorite kind of reading. And I found a biography that I had once upon a time. I read it when it first came out and didn't keep it, and I don't know why. Because it's one of the most interesting biographical subjects you could possibly imagine. It's Charles Nichols' Somebody Else. And it's about Rimbaud. It's about the French poet, the boy toy, the long flowing-haired pansexual boy toy, Rimbaud. And you wouldn't know it, but that's him on the cover. Because in a detail of biography that is so fascinating that it's one of the reasons why I prefer biography to the mere contrivance of fiction. In 1880, Rimbaud decided to give up not only writing poetry, but his whole literary world. He left France. And as far as we know, never wrote another poem. He was instead a merchant and gun runner. And was for the rest of his life. And it's an area of his life that's not nearly, of course, as well documented as his time in the capital. And Charles Nichols is famous for not only being a fantastic writer, a fantastic historian, but also for finding out answers. For you read one of his books and you learn things that weren't previously known, and that's amazing in the realm of history. His book, The Reckoning, about the death of Christopher Marlowe, is incredible. It's must reading. So that, and it will change forever. Of course, it will irritate you every time you hear that Marlowe died in a bar brawl. You'll know how far from the truth that is, and how desperately a large number of people wanted you to be saying that, even now. But he also had a great book about one small period in Shakespeare's life called The Lodger. Fantastic book. And where he digs through all the primary sources and really pulls them together. And here he searches for the non-poet Rimbaud. He searches for that somebody else, that other person who shares this person's life. And I loved the book. So I don't know why I didn't keep it. So I found it again. That's great. And then this next one, I have a mangled quasi-paperback of it's an absolute classic of my particular profession, the profession of book reviews. It's an absolute classic, and the version that I have a copy of it, but it's so it's been mutilated almost beyond use. So I hesitate to use it, and there's no good having a book you hesitate to use. And so I was very happy today to find a perfect condition hardcover. This is, I hate to say it because it's just a crappy title, but the title of this is "But Do Blondes Prefer Gentlemen?" ? And it contains homage to Court Youp and other writings. And Homage to Court Youp was an earlier book, also with a crappy title. Anthony Burgess had no ability to title his own books. Every title that he insisted on was god-awful. And the only, in his entire gigantic body of work, there are probably 2 or maybe 3 good titles. And I swear you, in each of those cases, he went down to the mats, wrestling with his editors not to call it that, to call it something utterly ridiculous instead, and just simply gave up. So the good titles of his are easily picked out, and the ones that he thought up are easily picked out too, and this is one of them. But Do Blondes Prefer Gentlemen? In the however many of you are watching this, there will probably be, at most generously, 2 people who have any idea where that comes from. And the place where Burgess drew it from was actually derived. It wasn't firsthand. He drew it from a source that drew it from another source. And it's just ridiculous to have a title like that for a book. Just ridiculous. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is a title, a line, a sentiment, a cliche that will be known now in 2018 to virtually nobody. It was already dated when it was used for the title of this book. And homage to Kurt Joop, those of you who might not have figured it out, those of you, since there are probably maybe 6 people left anywhere in the world who would need to know this because manual typewriters don't exist anymore, those are the top letters of an English language typewriter. Both of them are absolutely, you're not paying homage to the letters on a typewriter. But do blondes prefer gentlemen is just a quip. It has nothing to do with anything in the book. So I hate both the titles, but this is incredible. This is a very generous selection of Burgess's paid literary work, his paid book reviews and whatnot. And he is a book reviewer. I have mentioned on this channel before that I think it's a terrible shame that a lot of first-rate authors don't have their book reviews collected. Nobody's even bothered to go and find them and collect them in a book. And the reason why is usually because either on the part of the editors or on the part of the author themselves, there's a bit of snobbery going on. The people saying, well, you know, I had 4 days and I needed the $50, so I bashed out 600 words on a book I barely touched. So I hardly want that to be immortalized under my name. And the point I've tried to make many times when I brought this up is that some writers can't leave themselves out of what they write. So when they imply by that disclaimer that the book reviews that you're not reading from them, that they're not reprinting, are somehow not their best work, well, okay, maybe so. But it's still recognizably their work. There's a Burgess moment, or 2, or 3, in every one of these little reviews. They're well worth saving, and that's true of everybody. There is a so-and-so moment in every book review. So I'm very happy to have this. I will. The copy that I have on the shelf over in the book review bookcase is not resellable. It's not giftable. It's just going to have to be given an honorable burial. But I'm very happy to have that. The next one also, it was something I got it in. It's a big, heavy, beautiful hardcover. I got this hardcover last year, I think, sometime, and immediately sent it out to one of you. So I'm just going to keep getting it. And it's this. It's the collected stories of Mavis Gallant, who wrote short stories for The New Yorker for like 170 years. And this is a big collection of them, and it's an amazing journey to go through. She is such a wonderful short story writer. And this is something, like the Burgess book, this is something that is going to go in this room right away instead of outside. And as a result, I need to find room for it. I need to. I know where I want it to be. I'm slowly building a little shelf of great collected short story volumes from the 20th century. I have Cheever there already. I have Eudora Welty there already. I now have Mavis Gallant. I need Flannery O'Connor and a couple of other people. And so I know that this is going to go on the shelf right next to John Cheever and Eudora Welty, which means something on that shelf is going to have to go. So I'll have to figure that out. But I was very happy to find this again. So it's also just a lovely collected edition. Then the next one is a little pet subject of mine. I love the subject. I can't read enough about it. And I don't have this volume, or I didn't anyway. This is by Clive Aslett, and this is The Last Country Houses. This is from Yale University Press, and it takes you through the country house up to the middle of the 20th century. It follows in a series. There are a couple of earlier books in the series. One of them is a classic work on the English country house by Mark Giraud, and there are a couple of others. And I love this. I love this sort of thing. I love reading them. I've been to most of these places. That's Plumpton Place in Sussex on the cover. I don't know if you can see. There's a beautiful house right there. Yes, indeed. But there's also a beautiful house right there that's in the process of being built. You don't have any workmen at this house. You have the master architect in this house. But I love reading about these things, and this one it will be a little extra because it will take me later in time than any of the other country house books that I have. So that's fantastic. Later in time, I mean, as with these houses being working houses, being actual working homes, there are many, many big picture books on English country houses that were done in the last 40 years. But by that point, the National Trust has taken over most of these places, and there is no sense of people living in them. There's no sense of how they work as a house. Instead, they're museums. So I was very happy to find this, and then once again, like with the Anthony Burgess and like with the Mavis Gallant, this is coming straight into this room. With the other Country House books, I'm just going to have to find a way to fit it. That's all. And then the last one is an older thing. It's a keepsake, but it will give me at least 2 hours of pleasure now, and then an hour, here and there. And it's on a subject I love. It's Venice. This is the Venice I love in a box. This is the Venice I love. It's just a big picture book with all sorts of ruminations about all the famous sights and sounds of Venice. And it has... the photographs are by Jean Ibert. The introduction is by Jean Cocteau, but maybe he had it ghostwritten. It'll be an easy way to tell. If it's boring and incoherent, then it's by Cocteau. If it's not, then he had somebody ghostwrite it. And the text is by André Fragodeau and Michel Déon. And it's just going to be a lovely, impressionistic thing about Venice. And those of you who haven't maybe caught up with my 5,000 videos, I love Venice and used to live there. And will never see it again. Probably. I will never see Venice again. I will certainly never live there again. So I look at books. That's a pretty natural thing, I think. So that's it. That was a Brattle visit that I paid today. And as with every trip to the Brattle, I leave with an armload of books, but I leave also sort of melancholy, wondering when I'm going to get back. It used to be I went to the Brattle every day, or almost every day. Now I wonder when I'm going to get back. So, like for instance, I'm planning on spending the next few days doing nothing but reading and writing on the couch here at Hyde Cottage, not stirring anywhere except outside with the Bean to walk around so she can scream at strangers to pat her. But this will do for now. This is the Venice I love, the Last Country House, the Collected Stories of Mavis Gallant, but Do Blondes Prefer Gentlemen by Anthony Burgess, the great Anthony Burgess, his book reviews. Somebody Else by Charles Nicholl about the second half of Rimbaud's life, the half nobody knows about. And Salem Is My Dwelling Place about Nathaniel Hawthorne. So I have now corrected the oversight of having no Hawthorne biographies. I now have the one specific biography that I like and the one general biography that I like. So I'm done for Hawthorne. And that's it. That was my Brattle trip. And of course, now that I don't go to the Brattle every day, I imagine a sensation that a lot of people do who don't go that often to the Brattle. I leave, and all I'm thinking about are the books I didn't get. I'm thinking about the ones I left behind. Whether I thought I don't need them, or whether I thought they'd be too heavy to lug around, or whatnot. But one way or another, that's the one big risk you run with a place as great as the Brattle, is that the stock changes so often that you miss things. But anyway, I will certainly include you the next time I go to the Brattle. I just don't know when that will be. Maybe next week, sometime. That would be great. But otherwise, we certainly have plenty of other books to talk about. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.